It's time for
DodgerHeads. What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by our newest Sunday night partner, Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic. Fabian, we'll get to the World Baseball Classic in a moment, but it's good to have you here on a Sunday and hopefully lots of Sundays moving forward.
Yeah, it's good to be here. And obviously, I'm sure we'll be talking about like a lot of really interesting games like right after those games. And this is starting that tradition, I guess. Like that was a heck of a baseball game we just watched.
I have to ask, the last pitch. I mean, this is a Team USA rooting for show in general. I know there's the beauty of being a Dodger fan is there are people that root for countries across the world who also follow the Dodgers. I will say this as a guy rooting for Team USA. That is an awful, awful way for a game of that magnitude to end.
Yeah, it's just a bad way for the game to end. Like, I rooting interest aside, whatever. Like, and also, like, I mean, the strike zone was bad all game long, but whatever. You just can't have that game end in that fashion, which is exactly what happened. And when really everyone should be talking about, all right, what a great performance that was, pitching wise. Mason Miller being one of the most dominant arms of the game. Roman Anthony having that big moment. Even Junior Camaro's moment earlier in the game. Like, this is the stuff that we should be talking about with this game. And at least for the immediate future, like the moments immediately after the game, that's all anyone can talk about is the call, which is obviously a position no one ever wants to be in.
Yeah, if you missed it, Mason Miller pitching the Perdomo with a full count of the game-tying run on third in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, and it's a breaking ball that lands generously beneath the zone. Would have easily been overturned if there was ABS and there were challenges left. Although maybe we have to give some credit to, very noted pitch framer Will Smith in this game. Fabian, do we get to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Austin Barnes was always good at framing out the pitches in the bottom part of the zone, so maybe he taught him how to do that one. So,
well, and the sort of elephant in the room is it would have been Mason Miller versus Tatis had that been ball 4, because that's the other piece. It's not like this was a 1-2 pitch that would have made it 2-2, and then we're kind of back in the same spot. This would have put the go-ahead run on first, and it would have flipped the lineup over and brought the number 1 hitter back up in Tatis. And I mean, again, just purely for the drama, Padre versus Padre, Tatis, who is like the most polarizing player in Major League Baseball, it seems like, for him to have been the guy in that spot. While I'm glad the U.S. won, I am bummed that we did not get to experience that moment.
Especially because Tatis, like earlier in the game, had runners on second and third, 1 out in that spot and struck out. And obviously another strikeout sort of got them out of the inning. So yeah, like that would have been another spot for redemption for him potentially. But like that was just a fun game. Like, I don't know. Like, it's been a while since I've been able to like sit back and like I don't get to watch that many games just purely as a fan these days. And like that was just fun to enjoy. I think the pitching on both sides is really good. Yeah, it's just one of those things where like that's what the WBC should be, was that sort of game. And in a lot of ways that felt like the final. Obviously, I don't want to take anything away from Italy or Venezuela, but like that felt like the final. I think that was the game that everyone was kind of looking forward to going in.
I'm glad you said that, because we've joked on this show that even as Dodger fans watching the World Series, it's sometimes not the most enjoyable experience until things are over. I would say often isn't. This was, like you said, one of the first times in a long time where a game of this magnitude, where you could just feel the emotion in the stadium, in the players, the way guys were reacting to every little thing, the tension of how great a game it was, to just be able to sit back and enjoy it and not feel like my week was going to be ruined if the game went one way or the other, was incredibly enjoyable. And again, it doesn't hurt that Team USA comes out on top. So good stuff there. Team USA again continues, as Fabian said, Venezuela versus Italy coming up. We're going to talk about some of the World Baseball Classic implications moving forward. All of the Dodgers not named Will Smith will be headed back, or are headed back, to Dodgers camp. And the good news, they're all headed back in one piece as far as we know. So lots of stuff there to get to. Let's get to a couple super chats right off the top, Aaron says, super glad to have Fabian joining the show. I always reference his athletic articles in my journalism classes. He does amazing work. So there you go, Fabian. Congratulations. We're paying our people to say nice things to you on night number 1. So I'm glad that Aaron was first to get in here. But I don't know, Aaron, are you at Arizona State? That's the real question here. Are those the journalism classes? If they name dropped your name at Arizona State, Fabian, do you think that would help their grade a little bit?
I think it depends on the professor, but thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that. Very kind words. But yeah, I will. Obviously, I really excited to sort of join along here and sort of hear from you guys a little bit more too.
Katie, also a Arizona State grad, is that right?
Yes. Half of the Dodgers beat right now consists of Arizona State graduates, and all of us kind of crossed over at the same time too.
Was Jack also at Arizona State? Is that right?
Yes, he was the graduating class after Katie. So I was in one graduating class, then Katie, then me.
Okay, well, I'll put you on the spot. Which of those 3 people, if name dropped in an Arizona State journalism class, do you think would get the most bonus points right now?
Either Jack or Katie.
Okay, not you. I like that. I appreciate the humility. Gabriel says, not happy with the called strike 3 to end the game. I am happy for Will Smith and Team USA advancing to the finals. We don't need to talk about the dropped pitch that Will Smith had in the 9th that definitely moved the runner into scoring position and almost cost them, because that's irrelevant compared to all the other good things Will Smith did tonight, right?
Yeah, and I guess like one small other factor in that is like Mason Miller was not landing his breaking ball at all that entire inning, and that's what happened on that pitch. That was a backup slider. He had backed up 2 more previously. It's like he did not have a great feel for that breaking ball, which makes ending that game on a breaking ball all the more interesting.
Well, Smoltz was right on it on the broadcast where he's like, this guy has no feel for the breaking ball. You just have to keep peppering fastballs and hoping. And sure enough, he had no feel for his breaking ball, and he just got bailed out by the umpire. So
it was a nasty pitch and a great take from Perdomo, I will say. Like that last one was like the best executed one he had.
Totally. Absolutely. So, all right, let's get to some of the Dodger headlines. Again, if you're new here, Fabian Ardaya, one of the beat reporters covering the Dodgers for The Athletic, has been on the beat for a while now, is going to be joining us once a week. And the biggest storyline, it feels like right now, Fabian, is some of the stuff we saw today, which is a couple Dodgers outfielders who appear to be feeling good offensively and in the box. And let's start with Kyle Tucker, the biggest acquisition the Dodgers made this offseason. His on-base percentage is up to .438. His slug is up to .558. He has a couple home runs in just the past couple of days. For a guy who was terrible in the spring, as he pointed out himself last year, for him to be finding it, this is good news for the Dodgers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that's kind of played out has been also a good indicator of things. I think that's something I'm writing for tomorrow. I think he has seen 8 3-ball counts in 26 plate appearances. Like he's walked a bunch of times. Like this is a guy who's working a lot of counts, and he is a guy who the last couple of years has had the lowest chase rates of his career. This is a guy who like doesn't necessarily see an extreme amount of pitches, but he does work counts, and that's something that's going to matter a lot, especially when you're hitting behind Shohei Ohtani. Especially when you have Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman likely hitting behind you. That's sort of one of those things that the Dodgers are kind of envisioning for him offensively, that this is a guy who can, in a lot of ways, like a Max Muncy, be the guy who can sort of work counts, sort of be the steadying presence in the middle of the Dodgers lineup. And I mean, that's kind of what he was signed to be. And obviously, he's also a guy who, in his own right, is very dangerous with the bat, as he's kind of shown with the home runs the last couple of days.
Well, I'm glad you said Muncy, because as you're describing him, I'm like, a guy who is elite at not chasing and a guy who is elite at drawing walks right in the middle of the Dodgers lineup. That sounds like somebody else. And the key to that, Fabian, is we've talked about a ton on our show, and I'm not sure I can totally explain why this is, but for whatever reason, Max Muncy appears to be the most important person in the Dodgers lineup most of the time, because when he goes out, the offense always seems to sputter. I imagine adding a second player like that in Kyle Tucker, who can replicate some of that stuff, is both going to be a force multiplier when they're both in there, but also take a little bit of the load off of everybody else in days when Muncy isn't in there driving up pitch counts and whatnot.
Yeah, I think the thing that's kind of defined Max Muncy's time as Dodgers, like he has defined what the Dodgers offense kind of ideally has been, which has been sort of being a boa constrictor around opposing pitching stats, like working counts, being really diligent about the strike zone. And he, in a lot of ways, has a high floor because of that. Because even when he's not hitting well, he can draw walks, he can get on base, he's driving up pitchers' pitch counts, and that really stresses on opposing staffs, especially over the course of a 2 or 3 game series. You get to see, even if you get to see it, another team's closer in a 4-run game one night, that's going to matter later on in the series. And I think that's one thing that Max Muncy does as well as anyone. And that's one of those things that the Dodgers, their floor gets so much higher when you have a guy in there, because it's almost as if it's not to say that other guys sort of get out of their sort of approach when he's not in the lineup, but it's always good to see a reminder like, all right, like that guy just like really set the tone here with an 8-pitch at bat. Time for me to sort of keep working, and also you see guys sort of benefit from it. Guys hitting behind them, guys hitting later on, a pitcher's more exhausted going around the third time through the order. So a Shohei Ohtani is really benefiting from that. So having another guy like that, who at least that's how they envision Kyle Tucker kind of fitting into the lineup, I think that's something that's only going to help the Dodgers.
Well, I was going to say, with Muncy in there, when he has like a 9-pitch at bat, it's like every guy for the next 2 innings is facing a diminished version of the starting pitcher on there. Because not only does he have to like rebound from that, but there's probably a guy on base. Like there's a decent chance Muncy has now walked. And so now it's high stress and he's out of the stretch and all of that kind of a stuff. And so adding Kyle Tucker right into the middle of the lineup, as you said, in the spot that he's going to be hitting, we know this is going to be a nightmare. And honestly, I'm watching Team USA and I'm like, holy smokes, like the guys that are hitting 7th and 8th in the Team USA lineup, it's crazy. And then I was like, this is kind of like what the Dodgers lineup is going to be this year. And I'm not here to say the Dodgers lineup is better than Team USA's, because Team USA's lineup is stacked. But there are a lot of guys that would be playing for this team in other circumstances. And so to have Kyle Tucker and Max Muncy, who, by the way, Max Muncy, also another guy who's been having a great spring and OPS over 1,000, which we're a big spring training stats don't matter, but I'm also a big, but they do matter when they tell me things that I want to hear, which is maybe Max Muncy is back. He did have a good quote. I believe it was the OC Register that had it, but Muncy saying, my swing feels like it's in a good spot. We worked on some mechanical stuff. It feels like it's right. So there's a chance that while we're going to get to pitching in a bit and they're kind of a little bit all over the place, the lineup at this moment in time, Fabian, looks like it's in great shape.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, obviously the Dodgers wound up winning the World Series, stuff like that, but like that's second half and during the postseason, the lineup was really inconsistent. And there's stretches where, especially when they were inconsistent, the common thread was that they kept going to was we're getting away from our approach. Our approach is not exactly what it needs to be. We aren't taking the team at bats that you sort of envision the Dodgers kind of doing. And I think that's one of those things that you're kind of hoping that floor is already there. And if you have also the star level talent of a Kyle Tucker, like that obviously makes your lineup only even deeper, like especially if you're projecting Teoscar Hernandez hit like 7th in that lineup. If you're projecting the bounce backs for Teoscar Hernandez or Mookie Betts that you are, like on paper, yeah, I think everything looks great for the Dodgers, but obviously we'll see. This is also a very old lineup, so we'll see kind of how they navigate over the course of the season.
One last thing on Tucker before I want to talk about Teoscar a little bit. Have you gotten any sense of how Tucker has fit into this Dodgers locker room in the clubhouse? And are you getting any reports of like, oh man, this guy's way different than we expected, or it's better than we expected, or any of that? Because there was a lot of noise about personality-wise, the fit, him as a guy, etc. Have you heard anything?
Not too much, but I think the best way to say it, like he's fit in. Like it's just one of those things where like he is kind of just a quiet presence. He sort of goes about his work, and that's a lot of ways. That's kind of how the Dodgers kind of are for a lot of their veterans. Like they let veterans kind of choose their own paths because they kind of know what they need to do to get ready. Mookie Betts does his stuff differently from Freddie Freeman, who does the stuff different from Miguel Rojas, who does stuff different from Max Muncy, from Teoscar Hernandez. So I think that's one of the things you kind of always already see with the Dodgers. So in a lot of ways, it has sort of felt like a good fit on paper so far this spring, just because like this is, Cal Tucker is probably a low key personality, but that's just kind of what a lot of the guys in that room kind of are. So it just fits pretty well so far. So we'll see. Obviously, it's spring training. Everyone's always in a good mood in spring training for the most part. So we'll see how things sort of go over the course of the season.
Yeah, and you mentioned like I get to be in the clubhouse once a year at spring training, but with all this noise about Kyle Tucker and the personality, you're around these guys a lot more. Like for you, when you were hearing that, were you kind of like, man, if you knew the types of personalities that were in the Dodgers clubhouse? Because I mean, I think people would be surprised what a Mookie Betts is like, what Will Smith is like. I mean, maybe they wouldn't because they probably watch the interviews, but like none of these guys are necessarily the opposite of how Kyle Tucker was described.
Yeah, and also I think there's something different to stepping into that clubhouse as opposed to maybe being signed to be the face of a franchise or expected to be the guy to establish something like he was in Chicago, as opposed to be a guy who was like joining something that's very much firmly entrenched. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of what he was in Houston. He came up as a young guy to a team that had already won a World Series, and he was just kind of the next star to come up. But he was never seen as probably the face of that franchise, even during those years where he was arguably the best player on the Astros. So I think in a lot of ways, like this isn't the first time we've seen Kyle Tucker in this kind of a situation.
Let's switch gears and go over to another outfielder who's having a great spring for the Dodgers. And again, that's Teoscar Hernandez. Teoscar, a 1265 OPS so far in the spring. He's hitting 471. I believe that number started with a 5 before he went 1 for 3 today. So poor guy dropped to below 500. But again, I always say these stats don't mean a ton, but in some cases, they don't mean nothing. This is a guy that desperately needs to rebound from what was a pretty brutal year in 2025. And when I say brutal, not just at the plate, if anything, the plate was like the least of his worries. The vibes just seemed off, the defense, all that. It seems like a lot of that is behind us, Fabian. I'm wondering, am I reading too much into 31 at bats he's had so far this spring?
I think he's looked good in those at bats, and I think some of the actual results maybe are decent indicators of certain things. Like I think the home run he had at Peoria the other night, like obviously the wind was blowing out a little bit, like all kinds of stuff you can factor in. But the fact he went backside for a home run off Cade Anderson, I think is a good sign for where his swing is at. I think when you've seen him at his best, especially in some of these postseason runs, like he's had some opposite field home runs as well. And I think that's a good indicator of where his swing can be. But yeah, I think we'll see kind of over the course of the season because we've seen him have hot starts. He was red hot to start last season. And obviously the groin injury happened. And he admitted obviously this spring that it was a lot more of an issue than he let on. And also he kind of admitted that he had heard the trade talk around him this offseason. Yeah. So you have to wonder like if it motivates a guy. Not to say he wasn't motivated before, but like that's a different level of thing where like clearly he's been part of something that has helped the Dodgers win. But if they're in a spot where they were open to listening to what they can sort of turn that into, I think that's something that can initiate something fresh for him this season. We'll see, but it's one of those things where at least in spring training, it's looked pretty good.
And I can't imagine that this impacts a guy like Teoscar Hernandez internally, but I know externally, a couple guys I want to talk about next. There's a couple young outfielders that are going to be starting the season at AAA who, from what we've seen in limited sample sizes, spring training against backups, all of the caveats, from what we've seen from James Tibbs and Zach Earhart, there are a couple guys who are far more qualified to help out in the major league outfield this year than anybody that the Dodgers had. And I know there's Ryan Ward people that are going to be in the chat. And as we've said before, the Dodgers kind of told us what they thought about that. I think things are different with Tibbs and Earhart. And the spring that these two guys are having, Fabian, is remarkable. I told people on our show, we had you on a couple months ago, and I paid attention to the fact that you mentioned Zach Earhart's name like 4 times in that interview. And I was like, Fabian, I don't think is just going to mention this guy's name for no reason. And nobody was talking about him. And now I see why. He tripled for the 3rd time this spring. Like the major league leader in triples in 162 games is like 10 usually. The guy has 3 in the spring. He's got a slug of 565 and an on-base percentage of almost 400. And then you've got Tibbs, who leads the team with 3 home runs. He's got an OPS over 1,000. He's got 3 doubles, including 1 today. These guys are really making an impression.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, like, after that Dustin May trade happened last year, you heard from a couple people, like, wow, they actually got, like, some actual pieces back for turned into a handful of starts for Dustin May for the Red Sox. So that's pretty impressive, at least on the face. Like, we'll see what those kind of guys can turn into, but, like, those are 2 guys who at least project to be big league outfielders, if not big league regulars. Tibbs obviously has more name brand kind of prospect pedigree, being that 1st-round pick, and that was a guy who got off to a pretty good start his first full pro season with the Giants, then got traded to the Red Sox, really struggled, and now it has come back to basically his old swing in a lot of ways. He basically felt like whether it be one small tweak or after another, or just his body just couldn't quite physically hold up on his first full professional season just because he got tired, like some fatigue in there, like some stuff in his swing got out of whack during that period in between with the Red Sox, and the Dodgers kind of got back to like, hey, this is what makes you. You have a really unorthodox swing where like you really are kind of rotational, like your back leg scissors out, like it doesn't look pretty all the time, but it works for you. You can generate power that way, and you can generate a good amount of contact that way. Like let's just like adjust a little bit of how you're going to use your hands just to help that bat path sort of be optimized a little bit, and it's worked so far. And obviously Zach Earhart's a guy who, like you sort of said, like this guy who got floated out there a little bit to me this winter as a guy to keep an eye on as well. Like this is a guy who could be in the big leagues next season as well. And man, what stood out to me is like he plays hard, man. He just plays hard, and it's one of those things where like that's not gonna make you hit, but he's hit pretty well this spring. He said they made a small tweak with his hands that's really kind of worked well for him. But like he's a guy who has looked pretty good, like you said. As far as like their actual impact this year, we'll see. Like obviously, like Ryan Ward's on the 40-man roster. He could be a guy who they sort of try out if they need to break glass early on in the season. Those are two guys. Earhart and Tibbs are two guys who are probably going to start the season in AAA. You don't see Andrew Friedman-led teams call up guys from AA, much less hitters. And also, there's just never been a bigger gap between AAA and the big leagues pitching-wise, like in terms of like the pitching you see. So that's one of those other things that's really hard to evaluate, and that's why it's been really hard to evaluate what Ryan Ward has done the last few years. As good and successful as he's been, I don't want to take away from what he's done, but like that's one of those things that's made it really hard for teams to evaluate that as well. So it's exciting for the Dodgers to sort of see this, especially because they know that they also have the wave of outfielders behind them, the wave that everyone keeps talking about. But yeah, like that's one of those things where I wouldn't be surprised to see either of those guys at some point get called up, at least for a cup of coffee in the big leagues.
Well, you mentioned the gap between AAA. Obviously, it's an incredibly small sample size, but in some ways, maybe spring training for guys like this matter more than ever because this is they're not going to see major league pitching all the time, especially early in spring. These were guys that were coming in the fourth inning once the regulars were coming out. But for the last couple of weeks, these are guys that have been starting games and seeing whatever major league level pitching the other team has. So it feels like in some ways this might be more helpful for the Dodgers to see than whatever they do down in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. And in other ways, there's still like a little bit of a grain of salt because like guys aren't going like with full game plans out there, especially for guys that they've never faced before.
Yeah.
And a lot of times guys are like, hey, like I really just need to work on my like getting my cutter feel right at this point of the season, especially knowing like where you're at. Like even like I'm sure we'll talk about Roki Sasaki coming up, but like if for a guy like Roki Sasaki, like he's focused on like I need to lock in my fastball command right now. I don't really care about like how I'm gonna go game planning against this Kansas City Royals lineup as much. So like that's another thing that you kind of have to at least take into consideration when you're evaluating these guys' spring training stats.
Last question here. You mentioned the wave of guys. I mean, they've got 4 borderline top 50 prospects in all of Major League Baseball who are all like outfielders, who are all like going to be one level below them potentially in AA, depending on how they shake all those guys out. They have Andy Pages, who's a young guy who's at the Major League level already. They have Kyle Tucker signed for who knows how many years that contract ends up being, but potentially 4. Like, what are they going to do with all these guys? I know that the hit rate is not going to be 100, but you would also think with these 6 guys, the hit rate is going to be more than 1 in the next 18 months also.
Well, if you hit on more than one of those guys, then those are 2 guys who are probably big league regulars, just as Teoscar Hernandez and Kyle Tucker could be free agents. Like in a lot of ways, that makes some sense. But also, like if you're in a spot where maybe you luck out and like 3 of those guys hit, maybe you can move a guy to a different position. Like Freddie Freeman's contracts coming up. Maybe I can move to first base. There's also obviously trades. Like you want to be able to like fuel that. And also, like we've seen the Dodgers do this with guys who are clearly ready for the big leagues and are blocked at a spot. They basically use that as a way to flip and replenish their farm system because they aren't going to be drafting high. They are not going to have their most spending pools. Like they're going to be limited a little bit in the international market because of how much they spend. And they're really conscious of that. And also, like, especially this past year, like they aren't going to have, they're going to be out of 2 draft picks because of signing 2 guys with qualifying offers. So I think the Dodgers can't help but see that as a good thing to have as much outfield depth as they do. And they can allow it to play out where they don't necessarily need a Jose DePaula to hit or a Zaire Hope to hit. As long as one of these guys really hits, then all of a sudden you're looking at it sort of perpetuating that window a little bit further out.
I want to go back to Tibbs real quick because Fabian had a great piece up on Tibbs that posted a few days ago on The Athletic. And you dug into something that he said to us when I was at spring training that I thought was fascinating, which was the Dodgers' approach to his hitting. Because people talk a ton about the Dodgers and how good they are at development. And oftentimes, I think I'm in this category. I assumed that meant the Dodgers will take a guy like Tibbs and do a ton of work. And every guy I talk to, it's like, hey, what's it been like in the Dodgers system developmentally? They're all like, yeah, they basically just told me to do like whatever I used to be doing before the Red Sox tried to change things, which is what Tibbs said. Like the Red Sox, he was good with the Giants. Then he gets traded to the Red Sox. They try and change a bunch of stuff. He struggles. He comes to LA and the Dodgers are like, go back to doing what you were doing, maybe a couple minor tweaks. I thought that was a really fascinating insight from Tibbs because he really did take off the moment he came back or excuse me, not came back, the moment he got into the Dodgers organization.
Yeah, I think sometimes with certain guys, it's a matter of like a certain voice in a certain place. Because I will say, like the Red Sox do have a good reputation for developing hitters. We've obviously seen with guys like Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer. And one of the things actually that Earhart actually told me was the Red Sox have approached everything is sort of like hitting as external, like approach, like what you're trying to do. Dodgers have, at least with him, have stressed more like, hey, how is your swing working? How are you biomechanically working internally? Because that's going to produce the external results that you're kind of looking for, like whether it be the pull side power, stuff like that. Yeah. So maybe it's just a matter of like certain things click with certain guys. But yeah, the Dodgers kind of, one of the things Brandon Gomes said, like, who are we? Like, you've been swinging this way your whole life, and you got to be a first round pick, and you're succeeding. Who are we to tell you that that's not going to work? We've seen unorthodox things work all the time, but here are maybe one or two things we could do to make what you do maybe more consistent. Like a guy like James Tibbs, for example, or go full circle here, is that obviously he's so rotational, the way he's like scissor out, that sometimes it would put his hands in a bad position right before the swing, and he can't really do anything with it. So if they're able to do something with this, where he starts his hands in a different spot, he's able to more consistently able to get the swing off that he likes. So like it's small stuff like that where like, hey, what you do works. We want you to do more of what you're doing as opposed to doing it when it clicks and then you don't really know how to click it right back and stuff like that.
Would you say Tibbs and Earhart, of all of the kind of outsiders looking in at this opening day roster, do you feel like Tibbs and Earhart are kind of the talk of Dodgers people when it comes to younger guys on the outside?
Yeah, in terms of the guys like who could conceivably be in the big leagues this year and also are pretty clearly not going to be on the opening day roster at this point. Yeah, I think those are the two guys who have stood out the most. Those are guys who arguably played the most. Like those guys are in the lineup pretty much every single day or coming in for defense pretty much every single day. And I do think it's interesting how much first base they've had Tibbs play. It's one of those things where like obviously you're hoping for Freddie Freeman to keep continued health, keep performing as well as he has. But they have a couple of contingencies just in case. Just because this is the way the Dodgers sort of thought this through. Is like, all right, like we need to have contingency in case worse comes to worse. Understanding the age, Dalton Rushing, like stay fresh at first base. James Tibbs, like show that you can at least handle it in a pinch. Because especially for guys who are blocked, like they will try to create every opportunity to have a sustained runway. Because like, especially for guys like that, like they usually try to have an extended way of sort of proving yourself. Dalton Rushing possibly aside, just because of the obvious circumstances in that case.
Yeah, I love it. Mookie Betts 50 with the super chat. Welcome to the fam, Fabian. So another welcome there. Again, thanks to everybody hopping in with us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. This is Fabian Ardaya, who's going to be hopping in with us a lot of Sundays throughout. I would say most Sundays or every Sunday, but next Sunday is one of the ones that doesn't work because it's the Freeway Series and all of that. So we're going to make it work, hopefully to have him in once a week. So we're looking forward to that. I'm going to pause real quick here, and I want to give a shout out to our friends at SeatGeek who are sponsoring this episode. So here's an ad for our friends at SeatGeek. What's up, Dodger fans? This is Jeff Spiegel with DodgerHeads. And who is fired up to be at Dodger Stadium this year so that you can tell your grandkids you saw the Dodgers the year they went for the three-peat? If that's you, I have good news because the sponsor of today's show is SeatGeek, and they have a special offer just for you. Now, if you've never used SeatGeek before, I feel bad. This is the #1 rated ticketing app with over 70,000 events, sports, concerts, you name it. And when you buy tickets from them, they are fully guaranteed. Now, the SeatGeek app is incredible to use, super easy. And if you are looking for Dodger tickets, this is the place for you to go. This is why when my buddy was coming to Arizona and needed some Dodger spring training tickets, I sent him a link to SeatGeek. So here is the deal. We have a code to get you 10% off your next order. And that code is very simple. It is Dodger Blue 10. That is right. Dodger Blue 10. Use the link in the description below and the code Dodger Blue 10 for 10% off tickets of your next order only on SeatGeek. So shout out to SeatGeek. Thank you for supporting and sponsoring this episode. And of course, go Dodgers. All right, we are back. We got a couple more super chats. Ryan Ward getting famous in the super chats here, getting popular, I should say. Richard Flores says, I feel Ryan Ward's spring training performance punched his ticket for the 26-man roster. Sincerely, Mark DeRosa. So good. So good. CCC also says there was talk earlier this offseason about trading Ward. Any update there? If the Dodgers ask for little or nothing in return, which teams do you think should be interested? Fabian, if I gave you like the trade deadline, is Ryan Ward still in the Dodgers organization? Or let me rephrase. Is Ryan Ward still on the Dodgers 40-man roster after the trade deadline? What would you say?
If he is, I would say it's because he's worked his way out to the big league roster. I think, especially like looking at what the reason why the Dodgers kind of added him to the 40-man is sort of for the situation where they knew that he was either going to be depth if they needed to break glass early on in the season, or he was to be someone at least you can get something for rather than let walk minor league free agency. They did listen early on him. I just, it's one of those things where like you're kind of looking around the landscape of the league right now. There's not really a clear-cut fit for him. There's not like a lot of teams that are looking to give 400, 500 plate appearances to a corner outfielder at this point. At least in this point of camp, we'll see. Like obviously, there's always injuries that happen. There's always end of camp cuts that are a little bit surprising. I think that's one of those things where the Dodgers are kind of hoping to sort of see how this kind of shakes out, how this kind of plays out. But at least as of right now, like keeping him on the 40-man roster was the best way to preserve that depth, and that's maybe kind of a bad place for Ryan Ward to be in personally for his career, but like it's also one of those things where he's on the 40-man roster and we'll see kind of how it plays out.
Yeah. No, we've talked a lot. There's people that say, man, for his sake, I hope they let him go. And it's like, unfortunately, this is where it's a business. The Dodgers can send him down to AAA 3 consecutive years, and there's nothing he can do about it. But the flip side to all this is, again, what are the alternative options out there for Ryan Ward? And that's the tricky part for Ryan Ward. So it's also, I was going to say, like, in my opinion, if the Dodgers needed to win a game and needed an outfielder, do you think Ryan Ward, let me phrase this in a way that makes no sense baseball wise. If you ignore who's on the 40-man roster and who's not on the 40-man roster, do you think people in the Dodgers believe that Ryan Ward is better than either Tibbs or Earhart right now?
I think they would rather give big league at bats to Ward over those two guys, just because like those are two guys who have not even touched AAA yet. Like it's one of those things where it's just obviously it's a hot spring, but like there's just a lot of growth that you have to have in AAA, and I obviously Ryan Ward's seen a lot of time there, so like he's obviously shown he can hit that level, and he's at least a guy who you can trust to know what they're doing at the plate, at least for a small stretch of games at the big league level.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's shift gears here. Let's talk second base. In your estimation, Ha-Seong Kim is back from Team Korea. We've been told that his hand is fine. At least those are the reports when he was at World Baseball Classic. You're nodding his head, so we're hearing that. What's the status of how they're going to navigate things at second base?
Yeah, Kim said his hand's fine today. We talked to him a little bit after he came out for the game. It's one of those things where I don't know if anyone's winning this position battle. Yeah. I would say that Ha-Seong Kim has the lead, but that's partially because of a lot of stuff he came into it with, which is obviously the speed, the defense, the fact that he can play center field. It helps to have another person who can back up Andy Pages in a pinch. It's also one of those things where like he hasn't been around camp most of spring. His swing was in a good place when he left, but he said that there was some stuff with the swing that kind of crept up on him when he was gone. Like he said his swing felt good, and then he looked back through some footage, and his lower half is doing stuff it shouldn't be doing. His bat path isn't doing stuff it should be doing. It's not like he's necessarily a guy who has run out there and ran and grabbed the job. But also the same thing with an Alex Freeland, who like the results have been ugly this spring. It's not one of those things where like that's the most concerning thing in the world just because it's spring training. But like he obviously defensively has been very good. He has been a lot more patient at the plate this spring, arguably too passive at the plate when you're looking at like the swing rate being like 10% down from where it was in a small sample in the big leagues last year. But yeah, he's just not impacting the baseball either when he is making contact. Like he's making more contact than he did in the big leagues last year, which is one of those things that the Dodgers surely needed him to do to really stick. Like he's just going to need to make more contact than he did in that small sample. But if it's not impactful contact and you're not a burner like Ha-Seong Kim, that's not necessarily going to help your case either. And I think is like one of those things where we asked Dave Roberts after the game today, where do you need to have that left-handed strong side platoon at second base? He didn't say yes they need to, like no, but like when we set out to like design this roster at the beginning of the spring, we kind of had envisioned one of these guys doing this, and he mentioned Kim first, and that in that sort of answer, which probably gives you an idea of like what their thinking was going into camp. Was like, it was Kim sort of with a slight edge over Alex Freeland while leaving some room open for them to be bowled over. So like neither guy has obviously won that battle so far. Obviously, there's another week of spring. Dave Roberts said he wants to have his son Kim take as many at bats as possible over the next week just to sort of get his rhythm back and get his swing right. But yeah, it's kind of a complicated battle right now.
It's interesting because in the first, like when Kim left for the World Baseball Classic, it felt like, and again, we're dealing with small sample sizes here, but it felt like the opposite thing was happening. Freeland had actually gotten off to a pretty good start where the batting average wasn't terrible, but the on-base percentage was like 500. He had hit a couple balls hard that sort of got some bad luck. And Kim was batting like 500. And it was like, okay, well, hey, good news, everybody. Like I remember coming on our show and saying, well, the good news is nobody's losing this job. Everybody seems to be winning. And then since then, Kim was like 1 for $1 million in the World Baseball Classic. And I don't think Freeland's gotten a hit since then. He's probably got the worst batting average on the team. And so it is funny how quickly things can change in spring training. And to your point, there felt like there was an opportunity here for maybe Alex Freeland because he was not the presumptive favorite to be the left-handed guy on the roster. And while he has been quote unquote better, it's definitely not been good enough. And so I see people saying Santiago Espinal in the chat. The problem is he's right-handed. So what they need is a lefty to play second base. So if you had to guess right now, would it be Rojas and Kim kind of platooning at second base to start the season for the Dodgers?
I would guess so, with some Espinal maybe mixed in every once in a while. It also Espinal mixing in to spell Max Muncy every once in a while. Like Santiago Espinal is going to be on the opening day roster, and I think Miguel Rojas will as well. That which still leaves that one bench spot for a Freeland or a Kim or whoever is going to be the strong side of that second base platoon. I think that's one of those things where we'll see how the final week kind of plays out. But I would imagine, at least as of right now, it looks like Kim has the slight edge for all the reasons like I mentioned before. Where like you have the speed late in games, you have the defense is good with both guys, but also the fact that Kim can play some center field will probably help give you some like extra depth in that sort of aspect.
On the Muncy note, real quick, do you think like is Max Muncy going to be platoon? Do you think that's even in play, or are the Dodgers going to play him almost every day and Espinal's just every once in a while against lefties?
I don't think they'll platoon Max Muncy, but I do think that like whenever Max Muncy does get a day, it will be against the lefty. I think it's one of those things where like it's not like a hard platoon, but it's one of those things where like the 1 or 2 days off a week he gets will be whenever they're facing a lefty starter.
Yeah. Jedi Engineer, did you guys see the tweet where a well-known reporter forgot Ohtani was on the Angels? We did see the tweet. It's a friend of the show. We're going to be nice to the guy, okay? Friend of the show. So it's unfortunate. People make mistakes, all right? Mookie Betts 50 with another super chat here. What MLB city is your most favorite and least favorite to visit during the season, and why? Also, do you like Jeff, or is that TBD? Feel free to be honest here, Fabian.
Yes, Jeff, I like you. The most favorite, I don't know. Like it's hard to see like most favorite. It depends on like I like different cities for different things. Like I loved going to Toronto last year for the World Series. Like that is an awesome trip. New York is obviously one of the favorites. Chicago, Philly, like a lot of the big cities that you kind of would think would come to mind first. Least favorite city to visit. I don't want to throw any cities under the bus. I will say there is a new beat partner of mine who used to cover the St. Louis Cardinals who will be going to St. Louis whenever the Dodgers are in town there. So,
what is it? Wasn't there food like fried ravioli or something like that? I think it's like the famous thing.
Yes, which like my older half brother actually like grew up, like spent a significant time of his childhood growing up in St. Louis, but like, I still,
yeah. I've been there. Budweiser's their drink of choice. So, I mean, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about St. Louis. I thought you were going to say Phoenix. Native guy. They've got great food there.
That's like a free space.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. David says, Fabian, welcome aboard. I hope Jeff informed you besides talking Dodgers baseballs. Maybe me, hope you don't mind talking about food. So he's gotten a couple of our food questions before. So he's well prepared for that. And as I've said before, Fabian was one of the people, the first person I asked. Bill Plunkett was second, but Fabian gave me the recommendation of DeFalco's in Scottsdale, and it's one of my favorite restaurants ever. So Fabian is has been established as a good food recommender so far on this show. So it's good stuff there. Although when we were there for spring training, the one time we went, some Arizona State crew had made such a big order in the kitchen that they were doing no hot food. You could get pizzas or calzones and sandwiches, and that's it. Which, to be fair, the two things you recommended to me were a cold sandwich and the calzone, which we ended up getting a calzone. But Plunkett came in after us, and he did not seem very happy about the fact that like whatever entree he was hoping to order that night, he was not able to order.
It is a big favorite among the Arizona State crowd. I think their owner is a huge Arizona State guy, so that helps play a part in it. So
it was slammed, and they were like, "Hey, everybody, just a heads up, we're doing none of the hot food items on our menu." And I was like, I would hate to be the person that has to say that every single time somebody comes up to the counter. But if they get the cold sandwich or the calzone, they're going to be happy. So that's the good news. All right, let's switch gears and talk pitching now. You mentioned Roki Sasaki, and the Dodgers rotation is a fascinating conversation. We know Blake Snell is not going to be available. I had some questions about what Ohtani's buildup was going to be by the time he got back to the World Baseball Classic. Those have been answered because he threw a 4-inning simulated game while over there, is coming back a few days earlier than expected. So Ohtani should be fine. Yamamoto should be fine. Glasnow has looked good. Emmett Sheehan pitched today, got up to 66 pitches. River Ryan pitched today, got up to 53 pitches. Justin Robleski had a rough day yesterday, but has looked really good so far in spring. And then you've got Roki Sasaki, who, as far as Dave Roberts is concerned, is written in very dark pencil, it feels like, in the rotation. So what are they going to do with all of these guys, Fabian, once the season starts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where I think the sort of 5/6 you kind of envisioned at the start of camp seems pretty intact outside of Gavin Stone. Like, I think no one was surprised to see that Blake Snell was going to be out for the start of the season. The Gavin Stone thing is the one thing that kind of snuck up on them a little bit, but even then, like, that was a guy who was fighting for that last starter job in a lot of ways. I think obviously you're looking at Yamamoto, Glasnow, who's looked really good in camp. I think one of the things that is really interesting about Japan being eliminated when they were is, like, are we going to see Shohei Ohtani in the Cactus League game now, pitching wise? That was one of those things I asked Dave Roberts about. They didn't know yet. Like, obviously they still have to wait for them to get back and then sort of see where they're at. But like, it would seem like it would line up where he maybe would get a start before the regular season, whether it be in a Cactus League game or whether it be in a Freeway Series game. So that'd be an opportunity to at least have your eyes on him and see how he's looking. But he's going to start the season in the rotation. Emmett Sheehan's a guy who he had a little bit of an illness at the start of the spring, but obviously he's caught back up and he seems like he's going to be in the rotation. Roki Sasaki is going to be in the rotation to start the season. We'll see how it looks early on in the season, but like, that's a guy who they feel it's best to develop in the big leagues, even if he's struggling or not. And that's sort of the decision they've made there. So I think that's kind of where they're at. They have 5 off days the first month of the season, which means they don't necessarily have to go full 6-man rotation. Even when they do need a 6th starter, it could be a situation where they pop a guy in there, or they have a long guy or a swing guy who could sort of be that 6th starter. And that, I wonder if that opens the door for Justin Robleski to make the opening day roster, just because he has shown the ability to do both. And I think with a guy like River Ryan, doing it that way would allow him to maybe start in AAA, where you can keep him on a regular routine, regular schedule, coming off surgery, where you're already kind of figuring everything else out, and sort of be in a spot where you can still keep things in a controlled environment, relatively speaking, while also knowing that if you have to break glass for a starter, like, that's a guy you feel really, really good about.
Yeah, I think it's game number 12 is the first time they'll have 6 games in 6 days. But as you mentioned, then they'll have a bunch of off days mixed in. So when you said kind of as expected, is it Yamamoto, Ohtani, Glasnow, Sheehan, and Sasaki? Are those the 5 that you're kind of penciling in? And then if so, who would be 6th?
Yeah, and then I would probably throw Robleski 6th, just because he can do both. And I think also one of the things you have to keep in mind too is, like, they have a couple of those guys on that staff who have pitched on regular before. I'm sure they want to avoid that in April, but like Tyler Glasnow has pitched on regular rest before. They probably could do some schedule maneuvering during that stretch where, all right, we're just going to have Tyler Glasnow pitch on regular rest in this specific situation. But also, like, you have Robleski, who is stretched out to start, but also has experience coming out of the pen. You can sort of try to keep them stretched out, at least for those first 12 games, until you sort of need that 6th starter.
I want to come back to Roki in a second. I want to talk River Ryan, because he's been incredible. And we know what this guy is possible, right? We've talked a lot. Keith Law said he might be the best pitching prospect in baseball if he's healthy and if he weren't like 27 years old. He's at 53 pitches. And we've said on our show, like, if this guy's on this innings limit and you're kind of protecting his arm a little bit, but he's not going to be in that 5-man rotation necessarily right from the get-go. How do you see the Dodgers managing? Is it what you said, where send him down to the minors, have him throw kind of like short bursts just to keep the arm alive and warm and ready for if they need him later in the season?
I could see a situation like that. I could also see a situation where they like, if everything is going well, like they can sort of put him on ice for a little bit in the middle of the season if they need to. This is also not a team that's necessarily like been hard and fast when it comes to innings limits in the past. Like they've been also a situation where like they've been able to sort of ride guys, or also know that they can sort of, if they're gonna do it, they can do it on the front end with guys like you mentioned, where like maybe early on in the season they taper off a little bit from where he was at the end of spring. It makes all the sense in the world in spring to at least build him up fully, just in case an injury happens, something pops up. Then all of a sudden, boom, he's in the rotation to start the season. And you feel fine, and you can figure out the rest of it later. But yeah, like, I think there's gonna be windows of opportunities for him, for Ohtani. Who knows how it looks for an Emmett Sheehan in his first full season coming off surgery? But like possibly if he needs a break in the middle of the season, where they feel like they can do that, but they don't necessarily have to force it unless it sort of calls for it.
Okay, let's do Roki Sasaki. People don't want to hear me talk about Roki Sasaki anymore, but they probably want to hear what you think about Roki Sasaki. What have you made of his spring, and how optimistic are you about what this could look like at the big league level to start the season?
Yeah, I mean, it's been rocky. It's been up and down. I think I don't think that's that controversial to say. Like, it's been really up and down, and it's been up and down in ways that it kind of was up and down last year, where it seems like it's mechanical. It seems like the fastball last year was more the velocity than the command, but the command wasn't very good last year either. It just was even more noticeable because it was 95 and getting crushed. Now it's out of the zone and 97, 98, but still not in an ideal spot for him to be effective. And obviously there was all the talk at the beginning of the season about of the spring about, does he need a third pitch? At the end of the day, like, he needs to lock down the fastball command first and see where the fastball split play off of each other. And if you're in that spot, then at least you can get through the lineup once or twice. And the third pitch is the hurdle that you have to get over to become like a guy who goes 3 times through the order and can sort of figure that out and have a little bit more success outside in short bursts. But he's got to get to a spot where he can consistently even be good in short bursts. And the Dodgers seem to think that the big league's the best place for him to do that, to sort of have the environment the Dodgers have. Not to say that they don't have the good environment in OKC, but to have that environment where they can keep eyes on him. And he does seem to think that he found something mechanically, but in the end of that Red start and then going into that B game that he had. But the Guardian start, sorry, not Reds. It was a good year, same ballpark. But the end of that Guardian start and then that B game against the White Sox, he seems to think that he had found something mechanically, some sort of cue that can sort of line things up. And obviously, the velocity readings that Dave Roberts said that they had on him in that B game were pretty good. If he can dial in the fastball command and then have the forkball playing off of it, then all of a sudden you're looking at a guy like, all right, this is a viable starter potentially. We'll see how good he can be multiple times through the order, how much he needs the third pitch. But getting the mechanics down consistently is one of those things that he's been searching for years, even before he became a Dodger.
And it's interesting. I've talked a lot on our show about the commentary from Dave Roberts and the Dodgers has been so positive and so optimistic. And I found it really interesting how early they jumped out and said, this is a guy who's going to be in our rotation. Because if you did the math, we all knew there were going to be 4-ish guys competing for 1 or 2 spots, depending on Snell's health. And so for them to start the spring with like, this is the guy, and they've been consistent to their credit. Do you make anything like, I guess I'm skeptical of like, are they trying to speak this into existence? Are they like manifesting positivity, wanting to say publicly so that he hears that they believe in him? Or do you think they actually believe that this guy is going to become the pitcher, even as early as this year, that everyone thought he was going to be?
I think that they think that the best path to him getting to that point probably requires him staying in the big leagues.
Okay.
Whether it be a way to sort of keep, I don't know if keep him engaged is the right way to say it, but like that's in terms of like being able to have like that infrastructure around him, so that way that trust and that communication can continue to grow. And obviously, like, there was obviously some stuff written last year about like how he wasn't the best at communicating back and forth, but on both sides, just on be able to have the be on the same page in some ways. And the way that Dave Roberts said it, when I sort of asked, like, well, why is the communication supposedly better this time around than last time? And he said, like, hey, like, if you're struggling you're going to go back to what you know as opposed to like what someone you just met is telling you. And obviously, he tried going back to what he knew, and it still didn't work last year. So there's still probably a give and take to be had there, but you'd rather have that be up at the big league level as opposed to like sending him down. And you have this super self confident guy who's always kind of done things this way, and like you know what, I'm not going to listen to this. I'm just going to keep trying to do this my way. If you want to like send me away to OKC in a way, so I'm not saying that's necessarily like word for word what they're doing, but that's the rationale that makes the most sense to me as to like why this year and last year they were like, all right, he's not starting in the minors, he's going to start in the big leagues. And as much as they talk about him being an unfinished product, that's going to be figured out in the big league level. And the Dodgers are probably one of the few teams that can afford to do that, where like he can bottom out in April and May like he did last year, and totally. The Dodgers can absorb it and survive it. So if they feel like that's the best way to channel the best version of Sasaki down the line, they're going to be at their best if Sasaki is pitching well in October, and they seem to think that that's the best way to do this.
I think it's a great point, and not something I'd thought about when it comes to this communication. Like, if in fact some of this smoke around their ability to communicate and how receptive he was is real, to your point, if he's in Oklahoma City, that's only going to dump gasoline on the fire that exists. Whereas, because we all agree that Roki Sasaki is not going to make or break the Dodgers season in 2026, possibly it's like, for the long-term development, we just need him in our hands and under our roof for the first couple of months so that we can watch how this happens. We can talk through adjustments. We can see things for ourselves and then go from there. And then we'll have more results to be able to point to say, we need to fix some things or we don't need to fix some things. Like, one of the two sides is going to have more evidence to point to say, will you listen to us now? Right.
Yeah. Like, it's taking some lumps, and also you get a better idea of like what you need to change when you're facing actual big league hitters. And like, you're not able to just overpower guys with your fastball split, like sort of like he did in that B game in a lot of ways, where like those poor White Sox hitters, like it seemed like they obviously his forkball is a special pitch, but like they clearly had never seen anything like that, especially with how he was kind of using it.
Yeah, I loved, and I don't think you said this, but I loved like reading the beat reporters' tweets about that game, and I think it was Plunkett who was like super praising Roki Sasaki, and then in the middle just pointed out like the teenagers that from the White Sox or something was what he called them. Like it was incredible box score and a positive for a guy that we're all desperately looking for positives, and yet every beat reporter made a point to be like, let's just say the guys on the other side weren't people you're going to have heard of before.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where like, all right, like it was one of those where it'd be bad if he didn't look that good, but he obviously like looked pretty good, and like the markers that the Dodgers were looking for got checked, and it was in a spot where like facing those hitters allow those markers to be checked, where he's not worried about necessarily the results of like him getting hit in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. Super chat here from D Nation Life says, Jeff, how is the new intro coming? Hi, Fabian. Look, I am trying my hardest on this. There are some things that are out of my control, and so we're going to try. We're doing our best before opening day. We might have a trimmed down version so that we just stop showing highlights from 18 months ago, although they are World Series highlights, so it's pretty cool. So stay tuned. We're doing our best, but we're no promises. I thought I could make promises. We probably did make promises, and now I'm regretting making those promises. So stay tuned on the new intro. We'll see. All right, let's get to some questions. All caps questions. Throw those in the chat. We've got about 10-ish minutes or so with Fabian here to get to those. I can start with one just because I find it funny. The Dodgers are really bad at the automated balls and strikes challenge system. I don't know how they did today. I think they were 5 for 21. Before that, there was an incredible video of Dalton Rushing finally getting one right and like looking up to the sky as if to thank God for that. I don't know. This isn't a big deal, but it's more funny than anything else, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like they're clearly trying to figure it out. I feel like every team's trying to figure it out. And I think like it's obviously still so new, but I know like baseball savants like try and like track like expected runs gained, lost because of like your success rate on challenges and stuff like that. It's like some teams are really good at that. Like I think the Angels were like the worst at the expected runs metric, even though the Dodgers were clearly like the worst at just pure like challenge success rate on pitchers and hitters. They're trying to figure that stuff out. And I think one of the things that Dave Roberts actually said a couple days ago when he was asked about this was like they are still in a gathering information stage, but they are planning on meeting at some point this next week before season starts to really get hammered down on a specific like strategy. Like, hey, we're doing it in these sort of situations. Here's who's able to sort of do this, and they'll find. I'm sure some team will find an edge and be able to use it, sort of like you saw it the NFL with some of the dirty kicks, stuff like that. Like where every time there's something new, like you're going to see people just try random stuff to see what is actually working because you don't know what the unintended consequences of a certain thing are until you sort of really just shake it loose and see what falls out.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved last year when they started to roll it out in spring training. And it was like, I had never thought through some of the rules of like, if it's a 1-2 count, like it was kind of like if you're already disadvantaged in the count, like we don't want you challenging pitches.
Yeah.
Because I think it was Alex Friedman of the OKC Comets. He made a great point today on social media. He's like, I know everybody's saying, oh, I wish we had the ABS system for this World Baseball Classic game. He's like, the odds that a team still would have had a challenge on the final pitch of the game in the 9th inning are fairly low when you only have 3. So it's a great point, but I'm curious to see, to your point, when you say some organization's going to find an edge, it's like, well, we're supposed to be the organization that finds an edge in all these things, but apparently so far we have not. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Trial and error. So we'll see.
Exactly. Okay, we've got tons of questions in here. Normally, we don't have to do a ton of filtering. I think I'm going to have to do some filtering. Aaron asking important questions. Clarification needed. Is shirtless Sundays every Sunday or just after a win, Fabian?
It's as long as I can remember, it's been every single Sunday morning in the weight room before the game.
And was this like a Kershaw driven thing? I know he was. So like, do we think it's still going to be happening?
It has been still happening this spring.
Okay, good to know. Okay, let's get to some baseball questions first. We have some Dalton Rushing questions. I'll pair two together. Sign stealing scandal says, our backup catcher has consistently hit like a major league backup catcher since being called up. Is that a win? TQT says Rushing was once off limits in a deal for Crochet, yet is just a backup for the foreseeable future. Do you think the Dodgers regret not trading him? Where are you at on Dalton Rushing and maybe what you've seen this spring?
Yeah, I don't know when the right time would have been to trade him. If it was the right deal that sort of came together for a Crochet type package, that would have made sense. But obviously, can't really go back in history and see like what would have happened after that fact. But I think the big thing
they've done okay in the playoffs, by the way, in the years following not trading Dalton Rushing. So maybe we just can call it a win.
I do think the way that the Dodgers sort of see it, like this is still a guy that they believe wholeheartedly in the bat. And they think that the glove is good enough for him to stick a catcher. And they know that, like, as much as they signed Will Smith to the longest deal ever for a catcher, there's a reason why 10 years was the longest deal ever for a catcher. Guys don't usually stick around at the position for that long to see the end of that deal at that position. So, like, while the Dodgers haven't openly talked about Will Smith eventually moving off the position, like, that's something that the Dodgers will probably do eventually, I would think, or at least be in a position where it's more of a split as opposed to Will Smith being the primary catcher and Dalton Rushing starting twice a week. It's a tough position to put him in. I think that they kind of acknowledge like he is in a tough position, especially because he hasn't had a chance to have regular at bats to kind of work through some things offensively. And that's one of those things that Dalton has kind of had to adjust to. Like he was very open when he talked to me about that, like about just accepting his role, accepting what it means to be his role, accepting that just because you're not only playing twice a week doesn't mean you can't have to try to hit a 5-run home run every single time you're in the box, which is obviously easier said than done. Like it's one of those things where I asked him, like, is that something that you're feeling in the moment and you just can't stop it? Or is it one of those things where you think, where you look back at the end of the season, like, oh man, I really was just trying to do too much. And I was like, no, like you feel that in the moment. You know exactly that you are doing it, but there's something about you that's wired that you just can't stop it. Like stop the feeling like I have to make the most of this opportunity now. And I think that's one of those things that he's tried to gain a better perspective on this season. And it's one of those things that he's had conversations with lots of veterans, but Will Smith being one of them, because he's one of the few guys who understands what it's like to come into an entrenched lineup, an entrenched roster where you aren't given the keys every single day right away, but you still have to find a way to make it work. And obviously Will Smith kind of hit the ground running, and it's easier to sort of, in some ways, to sort of deal with failure when you don't have to hit failure for a while. But that sort of is one of those things that Dalton Rushing has had to learn, and he's in a spot where it's gonna be a big year for him to sort of see how much of like what he says he's kind of learned can be put into practice.
Well, and one thing that I thought was interesting in talking to Rushing was his unique profile and approach to hitting is probably like harder for him than for most people to play as rarely as he does. I'm wording this poorly, but like his approach to the game is knowing the strike zone as like the bedrock of what he is trying to do as a hitter. And he said, like, when you're only getting in there once every 3 days, it usually takes reps to understand the strike zone and understand where the edges are. And if you're not getting in there, especially as a catcher who used to knowing it forwards and backwards, I was like, I'd never thought about how it's probably harder for him than like someone else whose approach is very different or whose offense is built very differently than it might be. So I don't know, that might be just a lame excuse, or that might just be something in his head, but it makes sense to me when he said it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like his chase rate went up last year from where it's been for his minor league norms. He struck out way more than he ever has. Like he said, I didn't have a terrible chase rate, but like it's terrible for me. Like that is sort of what makes him him in a lot of ways, especially knowing that when he does get the bats to the ball, usually it's hit pretty hard, even when he's not having his A swing on there. So it's one of those things where he's gonna have to find an approach that kind of works for him in this sort of role for now. And while knowing that eventually he'll have more window of opportunity, kind of expand that out to what he's used to.
Yeah. Eden says, I think they start Will Smith in the finals. He has been better than Cal. Yeah, he has a hit, which is, I believe, one more than Cal Raleigh has in this World Baseball Classic. Any update on Gavin Stone? When do you think we might get one, Fabian?
He's still another week away from picking up a ball and playing catch. And once that sort of happens and he can ramp up, then we'll have a better idea of where it's at. But obviously, it's one of those things where you just don't know. He could pick up a ball and be pain free, and all of a sudden he's right back to where he was, looking sharp, and he can build back up. It still would be a while, just because typically, like the time you're down is at the minimum the time you need to build up, and he wasn't even fully built up when he got shut down because he had only had the 1 inning outing. So it still would be a while till we see him. But like that's best case scenario, and obviously we'll see how he sort of feels when he picks up a ball sometime next week.
Okay. Let's see. Another double one. Mookie Betts 50 says, hey, Fabian, do you think I will bounce back this year? I'm asking for a friend. I thought this was a good one. Cameron says, who finishes higher in the MVP voting, Betts or Kyle Tucker?
I will go with age for Kyle Tucker on that one, just for that reason alone. But I do think Mookie Betts will be set up to at least have a better year than he did last year. Obviously, he said he feels as good as he has with his swing in a long time. A lot of it's like he feels he can consistently do everything he needs to do. He feels like strength-wise, he's completely back to where he is at. He feels like his bat speed is back to where he wants it to be at, back to where it was in spring training last year before the summer element. And he obviously some of the stuff is like very kind of self-explanatory when you hear him say it, but like it still is enlightening to hear him say it when he sort of says like, yeah, my bat speed was way down from where it had been at spring training, way down from where it had been early on in my career. So all of a sudden I have to make these decisions way earlier. And this is a guy who's notoriously a very patient hitter, likes to let the ball travel, likes to see a lot of pitches. He's like, I have to make the decisions quicker. I have less room to adjust. And that's why I was getting under the ball. I wasn't making as much contact as I usually was. Or when I was making contact off the end of the bat instead of on the barrel. So I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that Mookie Betts can have a bounce back season. But I still think that Kyle Tucker, you kind of know where he's at in terms of his floor. And like we mentioned before, like the types of bats he'll be able to work with, Betts behind him, hopefully hitting better than he did last year, and Shohei Ohtani hitting in front of him.
Okay, let's get to one more baseball question, then some food. Eden with another one. Thoughts on the Dodger Stadium sponsor renaming thingy? Your colleague Katie Wu was tweeting about this today. Uniqlo, I don't even know how to pronounce this company.
Uniqlo.
It is Uniqlo Field at Dodger Stadium or something. They haven't fully told us how it's going to be said. It will not be impacting the name Dodger Stadium, but they have a field sponsor. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how it sounds like. And it's one of those things where I'm sure there's people who are up in arms about it. Like, I get it. I totally understand that. It's also not that surprising. I think we've seen some teams kind of trickle this out, not necessarily with sponsors, like what you'll see like the last couple of years at the Coliseum. they called it Ricky Henderson Field at the Oakland Coliseum. Even like some college examples where it's Nick Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Like you've seen some people trickle this out. It's a workaround for the Dodgers, who have kind of obviously been really steadfast, like they are not going to change the name of Dodger Stadium, but I think they understand the marketing eyeballs, and they have leveraged those extremely well over the last couple of years. And I think this is just kind of another example of that.
Hey, Kyle Tucker's not free, people. All right, we got to pay that contract. This might pay the luxury tax bill on Kyle Tucker's contract, so we can hope. And wants to know, will I wear a leprechaun hat for us on St. Patrick's Day Tuesday? I will most definitely not be wearing a leprechaun hat. I don't own one, for starters, so there you go. I like this. Let's get to some food ones. Sign stealing. Fabian, what is your go-to meal at Unique Low Field?
I don't get to do the concessions that much. I think the only time I really do during the postseason, just because they don't do media dining. They give us like the vouchers to go around. So I can't really say like, I would go to the Shake Shack usually just because it was like the option I kind of knew. And I guess that's the Habit Burger next year, which I'm a fan of.
Oh, Habit's replacing Shake Shack at Dodger Stadium?
I think that's what it came. I think that's right. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's what got announced early in the offseason. But yeah, like I like Shake Shack. I like the Habit. Like, sure, I will gladly have either of those.
There you go. Big news there. I personally prefer Shake Shack to the Habit, but that's a hot take. Some people love the Habit. So, okay. Jedi Engineer wants to know which stadium has the best food in the press box.
Philly by far.
Okay. Are they Philly cheesesteaks?
They do sometimes, but I think part of it's also they have ice cream every single game, like actual like scooped ice cream, like ready to go. Like it's amazing. Yeah, Philly's the best.
Okay. David wants to know what is Fabian's favorite cuisine of choice?
Argentine, because I'm Argentine. I think that's pretty simple. Like Argentine barbecue, like that's always gonna bring home no matter what. But I grew up in Arizona,
give me an example of like if I were to go get Argentine food, what would I be eating?
You're getting body shot. It's like every single cut of meat you can think of, all on one grill, and it's just amazing. It's red meat. I could never give up red meat for it's just in my blood. So,
and is there are you putting it on something or in something, or is it kind of like barbecue where you're just eating the meat by itself?
You're eating meat by itself, but they have like salads. They have like a side called provoleta, which is literally just like melted cheese, like fries and stuff. Like it's great.
I'm in. It's melted cheese all by itself and meat stacked on a plate with salad on the side. Sign me up.
It's simple.
Somebody asked about which ballpark around MLB has the best food. We answered that. It's not Dodger Stadium. But my question for you is going to be, what is your In-N-Out order? So he asks, are you a double animal style guy? I just want to know in general what your In-N-Out order is.
3x3 with onion and animal fries.
Wow, look at that. Raw onion, you're saying?
The raw onion. Yeah.
Okay, 3x3. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. I started going
while I still can.
For sure. I started going multiple cheeseburgers because I just kind of like the ratio of ingredients there, but I respect the 3x3. Yeah. I think I'm old. I know I'm older than you, and so I think I've crossed the threshold of I'm no longer in the while I still can.
There's gonna be a point where I have to stop with that, but like I'll enjoy it while I can.
Okay, let's go out on this one. I believe I've asked you this before. It's kind of our go-to question, but if I did, it was probably multiple years ago. My favorite question to ask people is, if you were to go into a convenience store or a gas station or something, and you were to come out with one drink, one snack, something salty, and then one dessert, anything sugary, could be candy, it could be, donuts or whatever. And this could be like you're imagining a convenience store. So it doesn't have to be like every 7-Eleven carries these three things. They just have to, in theory, exist in a convenience store or a gas station. So if Fabian's going on a road trip and you're getting a drink, a snack, and a dessert, what are you walking out with?
Well, there's a really good rest stop between like Arizona and LA. So I actually get to answer this question. Yeah, I would go Celsius drink.
Okay.
Go Nerds Gummy Clusters.
Yes.
And then there's a Wetzel's Pretzels inside of this convenience store. So I'll go with that for my salty.
Wow. See, okay, I have so many thoughts. I'm not for or against Celsius. Haven't had them.
Yeah.
I think Nerds Gummy Clusters are like one of the greatest food inventions of the last 25 years. So we're in agreement on that. And for the longest time, when they used to have Wetzel's Pretzels at Dodger Stadium, that was my favorite thing to order at Dodger Stadium. So the fact that there's a Wetzel's Pretzels inside of a gas station, this is, I mean, I assume it's in the middle of nowhere, somewhere between LA
it's like right on the border of Arizona and California.
I'm sad that I will never get to visit this particular gas station because that's a fantastic order. Gummy clusters and Wetzel's pretzels. Say no more. Any dipping sauce that people want to know? Are you dipping the pretzel in anything? Are we going just like straight buttery, salty? What?
A cheese sauce. Like
Okay.
the normal cheese sauce, yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, that is Fabian Ardaya, folks, from The Athletic. You can check out his stuff on The Athletic alongside Katie Wu. There is a great article on James Tibbs up I referenced from a few days ago. It sounds like you might have a piece coming out in the next day or two. Is that right, Fabian?
Yeah, some stuff we talked about, like the Tucker and second base mix will be sometime tomorrow. So
awesome. Well, we appreciate you hopping on. Like I said, the goal is for once a week. It won't be next week, but once the regular season starts up, we'll get into a more normal rhythm. We hope so. We appreciate you, Fabian. We appreciate everybody hopping on live with us, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And again, shout out to SeatGeek. You can check out Dodger Blue 10 is the code. Check out the link in the description. Get 10% off your ticket order. Get some Dodger tickets for the first month or two of the season and save yourself 10% on those. That is Fabian. I am Jeff. Folks, enjoy the rest of your night. As always, go Dodgers. And yes, still champs.